My name is Maree Airlee and I work within the languages team at HarperCollins Publishers in Glasgow. I am a lexicographer and translator to trade, but I've also trained as a primary teacher in the UK. And so I feel very lucky that my current role brings together my passions of publishing and learning and teaching. The talk I want to give today is about the importance of dictionary skills in early language learning and what that means for primary dictionaries in today's world. I would like to share with you why I feel that primary dictionaries are still very relevant, in particular print dictionaries, in the very technological world that we live in. In the spirit of full disclosure, my talk today will be based around the new 4th edition of the COBUILD Primary Learners Dictionary, which was published just last month, in fact, earlier this year. For those of you who are not familiar with this title, it includes over 10,000 words, which have been specially selected for younger learners. That's about 2,500 more than the previous edition. These words have been given CEFR levels, and we have also highlighted frequent words within the dictionary using our corpus evidence. Most importantly, and in fact key to my presentation today, the definitions and examples in the Primary Learners Dictionary have been carefully curated to ensure that they are age and stage appropriate and offer young learners the information they need, but in a safe environment. As well as additional information in the form of usage notes and line drawings, the dictionary contains a really useful supplement of frequency and curricular word lists, plus there are additional resources available online as a free download. I will be referring to some of these online worksheets in today's talk, and the link for these worksheets will be available later in the presentation. So, throughout the outline of the talk looks a little like this. I want to look at some of the pitfalls for online reference materials, which will help make my case, I hope, that primary print dictionaries still have a place in language learning for young learners. In the course of this, I hope to show you some practical activities which may help younger learners with some of the skills they need to become proficient dictionary users, and how to use these and incorporate these skills into their learning in a fun and engaging way. And then finally, I want to show you some of the free online resources that Collins has available to download, and hope you might be able to make use of these in your classroom with younger learners, and that will allow them to make the most of what primary dictionaries can offer. And of course, many of the skills that you learn through dictionary skills are transferable for other types of activities, and will stand your young learners in good stead for their future. So we'll come straight away to some of the difficulties and pitfalls that you might have if you use current online resources. The online language learning environment is massive. It offers a wealth of information, which is a good thing, for all ages and levels of learning, with everything available at the click of a mouse. However, it comes with its difficulties. Even for adults, learners and native speakers, this abundance of information can be overwhelming or daunting and difficult to navigate. And obviously for young learners, it is even harder. This slide I've put together gives you an example of what a typical web page might look like. There are lots of adverts competing for your attention, and even for young learners, some of these are quite appealing. There's one for a Lego motorised lighthouse, which I'm sure my children would have enjoyed. There's an advert for the zoo, London Zoo, to come and visit. And then there are others which are either irrelevant or sometimes potentially inappropriate for younger learners, depending on what the cookies are serving up that day. But what's the key of it is, the key point is that all of them are taking your attention away from your core purpose in visiting the website, from your lookup query. So, for example, if a young learner comes across a following sentence in a learning task: the children found a ball under the table. The task might be to draw a picture to illustrate the sentence, possibly exploring the use and understanding of prepositions, for example. What does under mean? Draw a picture to illustrate the ball under the table. And the learner may want to go online on their phone to check the meaning of the word ball. Well, in the first scenario, they look up an online dictionary, and you can see one on the screen there. The information presented is all absolutely correct and accurate, but for a young learner and also potentially for an adult learner, it can be confusing. The information is incomprehensible. The vocabulary is above level for young learners. A spherical or ovoid body used in a game or sport. Projectiles used in firearms. A roundish, protuberant and anatomical structure. Try saying that quickly. Is also very difficult and way above level for a young learner, so it doesn't give them the information they need. Looking at a children's online dictionary is slightly better. You're presented with two potential meanings, a round or nearly round object, or a large party where there is formal dancing. So immediately there's a lot more information which is accessible to the younger learner. But at the same time, you've got the instruction to look at more results, so there's an additional click required. You're told that there are 3 definitions for the first meaning, 2 definitions for the second, so again, you maybe need to go further into the entry to find what you need. So it's not immediately obvious to the young learner what it is that they need when they're looking at what it is they need to find out. So the alternative is to look at one of our COBUILD dictionaries. This is our online COBUILD dictionary. But even with the Collins own dictionary online, collinsdictionary.com, this uses the Advanced Learners Dictionary, which is aimed predominantly at adult learners. And there's a lot of information to navigate. There are full sentence definitions, so it does make it easier to understand what the meanings are, but they're not always written in child-friendly language or vocabulary which is suitable for the age and stage of the children. Some examples might not be suitable or even indeed relevant to children, and of course there are sometimes meanings given within the adult dictionary that are not appropriate for younger learners. So even our own dictionary website doesn't really offer what you require for a younger learner or a safe environment for them to look up. So that does bring me seamlessly to our COBUILD Primary Learners Dictionary. This primary dictionary and other reference materials that have been specifically written for younger learners have been carefully curated to make sure that they avoid the pitfalls of the adult learner dictionaries and the online resources, and they present the information in much more accessible terminology. So, for example, in this primary learners dictionary here, you can see that the ball is described as meaning 1, a round object that you kick, throw or hit in some sports or games. The examples are very relevant to young people. 2 young people were kicking a ball, a tennis ball. Meaning 2 tells you that it's anything that has a round shape. And meaning 3, a large formal party where people dance. And again, the example shows something that is really relevant to a young person. It talks about their parents going to a New Year's ball every year. So these examples have been carefully chosen to make sure they're appropriate and relevant to the young learner. And of course, in a print dictionary like this one, you don't have all the added distractions of adverts, cookie material served up by cookies, and all the other things that come with the online resources. So these using primary dictionaries here ensures that the young learners are able to access information which is age and stage appropriate in a safe environment. I think that's really important, that the environment they're looking up is safe for them to be in. And in addition, using dictionaries in a print format will help them to develop skills and knowledge that will stand them in good stead for the future. So they have to work at finding the information they need, but that's not a bad thing. I think we would all agree. The obvious advantage, of course, of online reference materials is its immediacy, and that's very much key in today's world. The online materials can offer the learner an answer in seconds, although, of course, it's not necessarily the right or most appropriate one. Using a print dictionary is a skill that has to be learnt and practiced in order to make dictionary use efficient and beneficial. You don't always need to teach these skills discreetly. Of course, they can be. You can have a dictionary skills lesson, and that's also a very effective way of teaching dictionary skills. But for younger learners, it's often fun to incorporate them into starter activities, games, and other classroom activities to enable students to engage with the skills that they're being taught and to learn to use them effectively and understand that they are also transferable to other types of learning. I wanted to have a look at a couple of ways that you can have fun with practicing dictionary skills, such as finding the correct word and meaning and using the information that a dictionary can provide. So certain skills, I think basic skills for using a dictionary are, and we'll look at activities for each of those, finding the word itself within the dictionary, identifying the correct meaning that you want, and then using all the additional information that the dictionary has to offer. Because when we put together and we compile these dictionaries, we think very carefully about what else is useful for the learner. And in this case, for the younger learner, there are lots of additional things we've added in that help them to make the most of the resource they have. So for skill 1, finding the word. Now, most of us are very familiar with using a dictionary and understand that the key to this is the knowledge of alphabetical order and how a dictionary is ordered. But for young children, that's something that they actually have to learn and practice. But there are lots of fun activities to help students with learning alphabetical order, practicing spelling, and all of these are crucial to help finding a word quickly and easily in the dictionary. And once students are able to find a word quickly and easily, that's half the battle. They're then much happier to use a dictionary. Finding the word itself and finding difficulty in finding the word is sometimes the struggle to be able to get them to use the dictionary at all. But practicing these skills enables them to find a word quickly and easily. So, for example, if you have in your classroom, show me individual whiteboards, then the first activity that I would suggest is an easy show me activity where students use a whiteboard or individual whiteboards to show me, being the teacher, the answers. One activity I might use is to say or write a letter, and then students have to write the letter before it, after it, 3 letters after it, and so on. So a very quick activity that students can engage in. They have to think about their alphabetical order and they then show the teacher. And you can have an immediate assessment then, of course, of how well the students know their alphabetical order and how well they can work their way through the alphabet. So let's try it then. I think we can use the chat for this, very quick answers. What letter, very quickly, comes 2 letters after the letter Q? So using the chat as your individual whiteboard, pop in an answer. Okay.
I think we're having some coming through now. So we've got S.
Yeah. What letter comes 2 letters after Q? So you have to think of your alphabet. Often students have to start from the beginning, so you might have to allow a little bit of time because they have to start from A. But of course, the more you practice, the more familiar they'll become with alphabetical order. And in extension to that, can you think of a fruit that starts with that letter? So can you think of a fruit that starts with the letter 2 letters after Q? So they have to engage a little higher order thinking. They have to work out what the letter is and then what fruit starts with that letter. Any ideas?
Okay, so what fruit starts with the letter S? So we've got strawberry that's coming through. Yeah, absolutely. Any more fruit that starts with the letter S that you can think of?
The only other one that came up was starfruit.
Yeah, I was thinking actually strawberry is probably the most.
I know, it feels like an obvious one, but starfruit. But yes, so you can see how students then have to think, and it's a fun activity. Another one, maybe a little bit more active. We obviously can't do this in an active way, but you could say to students, stand up if your name starts with the letter before M. So then you would get students having to be a little bit active, maybe not moving around the room, but certainly stand up. And again, in my experience, younger learners love that. They love being able to stand up. So you're practicing their alphabetical order, practicing their understanding of the alphabet, but you're also engaging them in a fun activity. Another one for alphabetical order is sort of along the same idea, is to give students a letter and they have to find or name objects around the room beginning with the next letter or the next 2 letters. So, for example, if we tell them E, they have to find objects starting with F and G. or you could say the letter E and the letter before it and the letter after it. So depending on the setup of your classroom, you might want them to go and fetch something that begins with the letter before E, or you might just ask them to think of and tell you something or write it on their whiteboards. So lots of nice, easy activities that you can use to varying degrees of interactivity. Another activity that I like to do, and this does involve a little bit of space and a little bit of the ability to move around the classroom, is a running dictation. The reason I particularly like this activity is it employs all 4 skills, so speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And for this activity, if you're not familiar with it, what I would do is write words within maybe even a topic or within a set of words that you're potentially learning. Write the words on small cards or post-it notes and spread them around the room, so maybe 20 words. Then students would work in pairs. One of the pairs goes up to read a word from the card or the post-it on the wall, and they come back to their partner. They then have to speak to their partner, so they tell their partner what the word is, and they must ensure that it's spelled correctly. So there's they have to remember the spelling of the word, and the partner writes it down. So you immediately have the reading, speaking, and writing, and listening, of course, when they're listening to the spelling. Once the pair has collected a certain number of words from around the room, maybe 5, maybe 10, depends how much time you have, the students together then have to alphabetize the words and then maybe work out what they mean, share with the class, look them up in the dictionary, write a sentence about them, whatever you want the follow-up activity to be. There's lots and lots of potential ways that activity to go. But what's nice about it is it gets the students active, it gets them employing all 4 skills, and it's an activity that they really do enjoy. And you can then, as I said, there are many ways of extending that activity. You could create cards in thematic groups, for example, rooms in the house, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. And in fact, you could create groups of words which have a potential entry in different groups. So for example, if you had for living room, sofa, table, TV as your words, and for bedroom, you had bedroom, wardrobe, TV, you can see there you can start a discussion potentially with your students as to which group TV should be in, who has a TV in the bedroom, should a TV be in the bedroom, and so on. So there's lots of extensions that you can do with that particular activity. So it's something that practices different skills, practices dictionary use, but has lots of other potential uses as well. And I found these all to be very received very well in my primary classrooms when I've done dictionary skills work with monolingual dictionaries and younger learners. And of course, there's always competition, which works particularly well, I think, with younger learners. A timed lookup is a good one, gives them a certain amount of time to find the page that a dictionary entry is on, or they work in pairs and they have to test each other, they have stopwatches. Again, all this element of competition is something that seems to engage students really well and is all a nice, discreet way of practicing dictionary skills. So I'm sure there are plenty of others, and in another environment, it would be really good if we could all chat and share ideas, but hopefully this will prompt you to have some ideas that you can discuss with colleagues about how you could introduce dictionary skills into your classroom as a starter or a finisher activity in a fun way. In the second part of lookup, so assuming we've found the word, we've practiced dictionary skills in looking up the word through alphabetical order. The second challenge, as we all know, is to find what the word means. Most entries, unfortunately, really don't just contain one meaning, they contain several meanings, maybe different parts of speech, maybe phrases. So it's crucial that younger learners understand how a dictionary entry is constructed and all the information that is contained within the entry. In my experience, all types of learners, young and old, in fact, can have difficulty in finding the correct parts of speech and meaning of the word they want. So in this activity, which is based on one of the worksheets that we have available online for free, we look at the different meanings and parts of speech of a word. If you want to, you can use the CEFR levels in the dictionary to choose a word which is at the appropriate level for your learners. And then you can extend that to challenge students with words above their level. So just to involve you again, I'll give you a couple of questions that come off the worksheet for this particular entry for the word fork, to give you an idea of the type of level that the worksheets are aimed at and the types of questions that they do, that they provide, encouraging young learners to really look into the entry to see if they can find the meaning they need. So first of all, if you wish, please, could you add into the chat, how many meanings are there for the word fork? How many meanings can you see in the presentation for the word fork? And this is a question that's on the worksheet that your students would then answer.
Okay, so how many meanings can you see for the word fork that's on the screen? So we've got 3, 2, 3. So do put in the chat box how many meanings you can see for that word fork. Yeah, so it's predominantly 2 and 3 that we've got in the chat box coming through.
Exactly, we have 2 numbered meanings, and then you might count the second part of speech, the verb, as another meaning. It's a meaning which is related, it's a change of part of speech for the second meaning, but 2 or 3. So you have to look beyond the first meaning to see that there are other meanings included. So the parts of speech, question would be what parts of speech are mentioned. So here you can see in fork that we have a noun and a verb. And a question for you in the chat, what is a fork usually used with? So this is a question that employs, again, a slightly higher order of thinking, a slightly more, need to look at the entry slightly closer. What is a fork usually used with?
Okay, so what usually accompanies a fork when it's used? So just do put it in the chat box. So we've got spoon, knife. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got spoon and knife, which are the main ones that are coming through as to what's accompanied with a fork.
Excellent. So I think that raises an interesting question. In our first meaning, you can see the example says, please use your knife and fork. So in the UK, certainly in many countries, knife and fork are very closely related. You often see them together. Funnily enough, you usually see them in that order, knife and fork, rather than fork and knife. So that's an interesting talking point. And of course, in other cultures, it's not so usual to use knives and forks. So you can then have a discussion around that. So I think there's lots of interesting information that can be taken from this particular question. But what you're encouraging your students to do is to look closely at the entry, to look closely at the example, and see that in this particular instance, knife and fork are used together. You can look more at the grammar information as well, the grammatical information in the entry. So, for example, you could ask your students, is fork a regular or an irregular verb? So looking at the information given after fork verb, forks, forking, forked. Depending on what level your students are at, you can ask them whether it's an irregular or an irregular verb. And then you can use the information in the illustration to ask what meaning a fork is shown in the illustration. So they have to go back into the entry, read the definition carefully, and decide which meaning is shown in the illustration. So we won't put that in the chat box, but you can see obviously it relates to meaning 2, a place where a road, path, or river divides into 2 parts and forms a Y shape. And if the illustration shows really nicely what that definition means, you can see the Y shape in the road sign shown at the fork in the illustration. So a lot of information to get just from that one very short, relatively simple entry. And you can do similar activities with entries which are at slightly higher level. So referee is level B2. You can then ask them questions like, what kind of games does a referee control? What is referee the verb? Is it regular or irregular? What do you understand by a football game? Because of course, depending on whether you work with British English or American English, there's a lot of, there could be discussion around the meaning of the word football. So there's a lot of delving into these entries that you can do with your learners, depending on time and their level and what you're trying to get out of the lesson. But just showing that there's a lot more information within the entries than you might first think. And all this information, as I think I said at the beginning, has been carefully selected and thought about and added into the entry to give learners as much information as possible. And then it's this third skill that I outlined a couple of slides ago is using the information in the dictionary. There's a wealth of other information in the primary dictionary which adds additional support for young learners. So we saw previously the illustration at the word fork, but we also give notes on English usage, notes on tricky pronunciations, illustrations which which help with vocabulary learning, and then there are supplements for vocabulary acquisition and study. I'm sure that you and your as teachers and in your schools can think of many activities to utilise all this information, but a couple that I came up with and have used is to take the language notes, for example, maybe find them and understand what they mean, and then get your students to present them to each other. So I did with a group of students, I got them to look at there, and there, which are homonyms, which are obviously all very difficult to for native speakers as well as learners of English, and they had to do a short drama. And I think doing this engages the children really well, helps them to retain their information. Of course, when they're presenting to peers, they have to understand what they're presenting. So it's really nice ways of getting to really understand the information in the dictionary. In terms of illustrations, for shade and shadow, you might give them the illustration and ask them to write a sentence showing what the word means in context, and that will show where they really understand it. So the girl sat in the shade of the tree, the boy looked at his shadow on the ground. So there are different ways of making sure they understand the difference between the two words. Or you could flip that and give them two related words. Give them the definitions of two related words and then ask them to draw the picture from the definition. So, for example, if you gave them the definition of cup and the definition of mug, words that are quite commonly confused, I think, in learning English, ask them to draw them from the definitions and then compare them with the illustration. That's also a fun way to do it. And again, in my experience, young learners love the opportunity to draw and illustrate. The supplements as well, there's a lot of different ways of using these. I like to create word searches with common words. Either I create them, students find them, or there are lots of ways online that students can make their own or give them a grid and they can create their own and share them or swap them with their peers. So that's quite a nice way of using word lists. It can be a little dry to try and learn, is to put them into an activity such as a word search. The other way of maybe learning lists of words or making children familiar with vocabulary lists in particular curricular areas, for example, is if you took an area such as art, pre-taught some words, for example, pencil, pen, charcoal, brush, easel, and then play word association. In this case, children then have to say a word from the pre-taught list which is associated with the word they've just heard. So if somebody says art, the next person would say pencil, the next person would say rubber, the next person might say easel, and so on. But the challenge of the game is not to repeat the vocabulary and try not to hesitate. It's actually harder than it sounds, but it's always a lot of fun and ends in laughter. So nice ways to practice things like vocabulary acquisition and using the information in the dictionary that's provided to help students really make the most of the resources they have. And I'm sure, as I said before, there are plenty of other activities that you can think of and to use this information with your students in the classroom. Now, in the previous edition of the Collins COBUILD Primary Learners Dictionary, we included a picture supplement, which if you know the dictionary, you may be familiar with. The image on the right there is part of the geography picture supplement about the natural world. For this edition, we've decided to move that picture supplement online, which means it's now accessible to everybody. It can be downloaded, printed off, and used in the classroom with your learners. So we feel it's a much more accessible way to present this information. And it is free to download. The link here is on the screen for the worksheets, for the resources and the worksheets that I've been talking about. And this will be given again in the presentation. So no worry if you don't have time to get it from here, we'll be giving it again later on in the presentation. And in fact, we'll probably be able to pop it in the chat as well if you need it. So this picture supplement contains 16 pages of pictures, which covers curricular areas such as maths, science, technology, history, social studies, sports, jobs, and several other areas. So it's a really nice cross-section of curricular areas with vocabulary that students can learn, all the illustrated vocabulary. And thinking about how this could be used in the classroom, I decided to go with the times, and I asked everybody's new friend, ChatGPT, to help me with creating a fictional paragraph to use the words in the picture supplement. So I'm not going to go into the pros and cons of GPT just now, but in this particular case, I thought it did quite a good job of helping me with something for a potential classroom activity. So I generated a paragraph which included some of the vocabulary in the geography picture supplement, which I just showed on the previous page. The prompt I gave is to write a fictional paragraph for learners of English at A2 level to include the words cliff, beach, sea, island, and cave. So obviously the prompt is entirely up to you. You can change the level, you can change the words, etc. So it's entirely up to you how you use a prompt, but the paragraph it gave me I thought was a really good basis for a lot of different activities. Samantha was excited to explore the island she had just arrived at. She hiked up a steep cliff to take in the view from the top, which overlooked a beautiful beach with crystal clear water. She could see all the way to the bottom of the sea, where colourful fish swam among the coral reefs. She then walked along the beach, feeling the sand between her toes and the warm sun on her skin. As she wandered further down the coast, she stumbled upon a hidden cave. It was cool and damp inside, but she could hear the sound of water trickling in the distance. She followed the sound and discovered a small underground pool with a waterfall. Samantha couldn't believe how many hidden treasures this island had to offer. So with everything we know about AI and ChatGPT put to the side, it provided a really nice starter paragraph for some ideas I had that could be used in the classroom. First, of course, pupils can identify the words and underline them in the paragraph. They might be able to identify other words that are related to the same theme. For example, reef, I think, is another geographical term that is used to do with the sea. And coral reef, I think, is a nice one that is an additional piece of vocabulary they could learn. You could ask them, once they'd identified the words in the paragraph, to write their own definition using either their own knowledge or the context in the paragraph, the context that's been given there. And then, of course, they can use their newfound dictionary skills to look them up and check in the dictionary. Artistically, and as we know, many children like to learn through art and visually, they could draw a scene from the paragraph. So they need to use the understanding and their comprehension of the paragraph to be able to draw a scene from that paragraph, a picture of colourful fish swimming among the coral reefs. And again, using the dictionary if they need to look up certain words to be able to give their picture and their scene some authenticity. You could use it as a grammatical exercise, for example, identifying adjectives in the paragraph and replacing them with synonyms or maybe antonyms to create a completely different kind of text. You could ask them to use this, or you could use this as a model paragraph and ask them to create their own paragraph depending on the level of the learner, using the same words or using a scaffolding structure with set vocabulary. So this could be used as a model. You could use it as a story prompt. What happens next? What's the next paragraph? And there may be other ideas. I don't know if anybody has anything else that immediately springs to mind that they would like to share with the rest of the group as to how you might be able to use this with your learners, potentially bringing in dictionary skills or using the picture supplement. If there's anything that anybody wants to share. I don't know, Bethan, if there's anybody who wants to put anything in the chat.
I think it might need a couple of moments, but I mean, we could revisit this at the end, maybe, if anyone does have any ideas.
Yeah, because I think it's always great to share ideas and share practice. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, do put that in the chat box if anyone has any ideas, and we'll revisit it at the end as well.
But there are certainly, a really nice way of using the current technology to make use of the picture supplement and create activities for younger learners. we've been talking a lot about dictionary skills, and of course there are lots of elements to dictionary skills, and one of them is understanding pronunciation and being able to speak the words, to say the words. And we have a lot of resources available to practice dictionary skills, but using online media. So we have our dictionary, but also we have our YouTube channel, which is English with Collins Dictionary. And in this, I think, provides really nice opportunities for learners to practice pronunciation and to learn vocabulary and context. So we'll look at that in a moment. But on this particular slide, you can see that I have shown some of the 10,000 pronunciation videos we have for both British and American English. So this is a nice resource you can use alongside the dictionary to be able to practice pronunciation of the words within the dictionary that you have in the classroom. We have playlists that have been put together, so they practice difficult spellings like OUGH spellings, words that have that spelling. They practice words with silent letters, for example, silent K and silent B. We have playlists which have words that are pronounced differently in British and American English. For example, here we have tomato and tomato. So lots and lots of ways of practicing pronunciation on the website. So it's really nice to use alongside the dictionary. On the same YouTube channel, we also have other resources available, again, for practicing English, for testing vocabulary, and learning English through context. And I can just play a couple of these for you so that you can see the kind of thing I'm talking about. So this one here is at A1 level, and it's about making a cheesecake. It's a short clip which uses related vocabulary about making cheesecake. A lovely little clip.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready for Mom's delicious picnic snack ideas? The perfect recipe for some delicious summer fun. You need 18 Oreo cookies. Cut half of them into bigger pieces and crush half of them into smaller crumbs. Then you need some sugar and some cream cheese. Mix these two ingredients together. Then prepare some whipped cream. Add your sugar and cheese to the cream and mix again. Now to build the cake. Big Oreo pieces at the bottom, a spoonful of the cream mix, decorate with some more big pieces of Oreo, and that's it. Your Oreo cheesecake is ready.
You see a lovely way of practicing really simple vocabulary in a very visual and engaging way. I'm sure there's lots of things that you can do with that, with a video like that, with learners. And there are a number of these clips on the YouTube channel. And the other type of video that we have is more of an interactive one. This tests vocabulary. We have lots of sets of vocabulary, for example, hobbies, pets, fruit, in town, hygiene items, so things you might find in a pharmacy. And all of these allow you to listen, or allow the learners to listen, read the word, repeat it, and then there's a short test at the end. So I'll just play the first couple of words on this so you can see what it's about.
Reading. Reading. Sightseeing. Sightseeing. Cinema. Cinema. Traveling. Traveling.
So you can see there are 10 pieces of vocabulary in each of these tests. You listen, repeat the word, practice, and then there is a short test at the end where you see the picture and you have to then say the word to show that you've learned the vocabulary. So a lot of different types of vocabulary thematic sets that are available for testing younger learners. And these kinds of online resources encourage learners to be autonomous. It's a safe environment, again, where they can practice these, watch the YouTube clips, and actually have fun while they're doing it. So I encourage you to have a look at that YouTube channel. And after I've been saying all that about the benefits of print primary dictionary resources, we do also offer online dictionaries for primary and secondary students on our main dictionary site, collinsdictionary.com. These dictionaries are based on our monolingual titles for schools, and so the vocabulary, definition, and examples have been carefully edited again, as with the COBUILD Primary Learners Dictionary, to make sure that they are suitable for younger learners. The content on the school site is fully searchable, and of course it's ad-free. So again, it's a safe environment for youngers to have a look and look up the words that they want to know. You need to register to use these. That's how we can keep them ad-free, but it's a very simple process to do. So please do feel free to have a look. So that's the school site on the main collinsdictionary.com website. So I think finally, just to say, here are some of the links of the resources that I've been talking about, the free online resources. They consist of worksheets with teacher notes. So there are lesson plans and teacher notes included in the worksheets. And as I mentioned before, downloadable supplements, including the picture supplement that we looked at. The YouTube videos, which include pronunciation of both American and British English, improving your English through contextualized clips. That was like making the cheesecake, and testing vocabulary through thematic sets. So little 10 vocabulary item tests that you could use with your students. Please do feel free to take a note of these links so that you can access the information for yourselves. Hopefully you will find it really beneficial for use with your students. Finally, just encourage you really to come and see us, to keep in touch with us through our email, on our website, collins.co.uk/ELT. We've Facebook, we have an X page, I'm still getting used to saying it, and our Collins International site. And there's a QR code here, which I'll leave up while we chat about questions, so that you can sign up to our newsletter, which will keep you up to date with the latest offers, news and events. So please do feel free to scan in the QR code, which is shown on the screen. And I think probably brings me to the end of all the information I wanted to share with you today. So I do want to say thank you so much for your attention. It really has been fun giving this webinar, and I'm more than happy to take any questions that you may have and hopefully be able to answer them. But thank you again for your attention.
So the first one that has come through is to say, what are CEFR levels that are used in the dictionaries?
So these are levels that are used for ascertaining the level of English. They stand for the Common European Framework, and they're sort of widely used to a certain level of English. So they go from A1 up to C2. There's a lot of information online about exactly what level each means. But what we've done with our dictionary entries is that we've looked at them and rated them against the CEFR level. So for A1, that means it's really one of the most basic words for learners to know. And we, in the dictionary, we've marked up to B2. So anything else in the dictionary that's not marked is either C1 or C2. So quite a more advanced level of vocabulary. But it helps learners to then prioritise the words that they need to know, and for teachers as well, to give them levels of vocabulary to work with.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That answers that question. We've had another one about why then it's used, which answers that question again. So we've had one that's come through. How do I access the video content and tests that were just mentioned? So they were in the links, which we will be sharing after the presentation again. So do keep an eye on your email inbox.
I think if you go to YouTube and search, or even just in a search engine and search English with Collins Dictionary YouTube, then you should get straight to the channel, and it sits on the homepage. Scroll down, you'll see lots of pronunciation videos, and then the clips and tests are at the bottom. The tests are also available with other languages, so we have tests with French, Spanish, German, Italian, and so on. So lots and lots to look at on those channels.
Yeah, Absolutely. Right, so we've had another one that's come through. So it's, I guess it's teacher to teacher advice here. So can you share some advice or rules to follow for avoiding spelling errors or mistakes for young learners?
Personally, I use the practice of the practice of practicing. I did a lot of dictation. I do a lot of dictation with my classes where I just bring up the same words over and over again. But there are lots of ways of bringing them in through interdisciplinary ways. So you could introduce the words or have them on the walls, I think, for them to learn, test. It's a difficult one because spelling errors, once learners have got something in their head, it's difficult to get it back out again. But I think practice is probably the key, and just bringing in those particularly tricky words. And we all have words that we know our learners struggle with, and bringing them in at every opportunity and making them practice. And I think the key is, in my experience certainly, is using them out of context, because I don't know about you. I'm sure as teachers you've found that when there's a particular spelling test of words, the pupils will spell everything absolutely correctly. But as soon as they have to use it out of that spelling test, they just go back to their original spelling. So I think it's trying to use things out of context and get them to practice. But lots of lovely activities that you can use as well through running dictation, I think, is a nice one, because they really have to spell the word out to their peer to be able to, and that shows that they've understood the spelling of it. But yes, it's always a tricky area.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep practicing. That's fantastic advice for lots of different settings there as well. And sort of similar as well, we have got a question to say any techniques about how to teach learners silent letters. That is a difficult one. Now we do have quite a few complicated rules in the English language about silent letters as well, don't we?
We do, yes. And I, off the top of my head, I think we do have some playlists on the YouTube channel with silent letters. Yeah. I think, again, I found what's been useful with my young learners, and as I say, I've taught in the UK setting, is to do things that are using different media. So I do find drama a very good way of doing things, where they have to, or peer presentations, where they have to understand the rule so that they can then teach others. And I found that's always been quite a useful way. And I have had a lot of fun with classes where they've had to create a poster and then present it to their peers. So they have to learn themselves learn the spellings and learn the techniques and then present it. And that's the peer-to-peer teaching often has worked for me, but again, a very difficult one to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess as well, it's kind of going back to, I guess, sort of discussing the phonics or the kind of rules around it. But I mean, there's only so many rules that you can say. So again, just that peer-to-peer learning is a great idea. And to sort of really get into the rules and have it sink in too.
Yeah.
Okay, so and we've got another one as well here that's come through specifically about primary dictionaries. So we've got how does primary dictionary use, contribute to a child's overall literacy development and language proficiency as they grow?
I think encouraging children to use a dictionary, a print dictionary particularly, because they have to use different levels of thinking and comprehension. So as we discussed in the presentation, they have to understand alphabetical order, they have to understand, which is in itself helps with spelling, as we've just been talking about. And then the trouble with online resources is, although on one side it's a pro, it's all the information is immediate, on the other side that they don't have to work for things, so they don't have, so they have to really work with a primary dictionary entry to be able to understand the information. They have to understand the definition, and just reading the definition itself is working with literacy, is understanding, because as lexicographers, when we create these dictionary entries, every word has a meaning, every word has a place, every word is selected. So the words are chosen because they're typically used with that word. For example, the knife and fork example, that was chosen specifically because knife and fork are very common words that are used together. So I think it improves their overall literacy because they have to read and understand the definitions to be able to find the meaning, and they have to really work with the language rather than just being presented with an off-the-shelf answer. So I think it helps with their higher order thinking skills. I think it helps with literacy in general, because the more they read, the more they understand, the more the literacy attainment goes up. So I think overall working in a more detailed way with language helps with overall literacy.